If we go to our client and say, hey, what do you think we should spend next month? We don't know our metrics good enough yet. And that's the question that if you ask your client or your company and we say, hey, what do we think we should spend next month? That part we have to know, we have to advise on that. And that's what I think is important. Hey, we've gone from 64 to 82. It dropped our MERR a bit because we're buying more new customers. However, our MERR less sub is stable and our NCAC is actually fairly stable. We're looking at cost per acquired first time customer and actually went from 277 down to 273. But we're reaching a point where we don't want to get too close to 2. So let's hold this for a few weeks. Let new customers flow in. Let email compound them. Let the subscribers start to get a second, third subscription. Then we'll scale again. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I all of that I can predict the future because I know my metrics so well. And I know where to push the ad spend because I know what we've done. So if you have a subscription business, every day that you wake up and the new subscribers or the existing subscribers get a reorder, you might make $50,000 before you spend $1. So did you have a 50,000 ROAS this morning? No, you have a 0 ROAS because the dollar that you just spent didn't make a new sale. So that's what is the truth. It is, were you going to make that money anyway off subscribers? Yes, that is MERR. Whoops. Let me just do this here. I press wrong buttons here. There we go.
Control Z for the win.
Right. So MERR here at 192, which means we are making $1.92 of every dollar that we spend. Now, MERR less subs means we're making $1.34 back on the people who are not subscribers, because the subscribers we didn't have to spend money on, and that increased us to a profitable level. This is
gotcha. So that's like new customer. Okay, got it.
Now, and that's where you say, okay, if I spend 50 grand and my MERR is at 1.92, a year later, I can spend, let's say 60 grand and it's now 2.61. I can spend 42 grand, it's a 3.52, or 64,000, it's a 2.43. So an 80 grand at a 2 versus a 50 grand at a 192. Why can I spend 30 grand more and get a better MERR? Because I have more subscribers. They are paying me more money per day without me having to spend a dime on them. So when you stack one existing customer that pays you 30, 2 existing customers that pay you 30, 3 existing customers that pay you 30, okay, now you're making $9 a day without trying. That's how that compounds. It's important to know what you're buying them at. It's important to know what your profitability, what your cash in, cash out is. It's important to know if you are spending too much on new, which means it's dropping down your MERR and NMERR. Those are all things you have to balance, because if this drops below 1.5, I have to take money out of my own physical pocket and say, I'm sorry, here's cash, because I'm an equity partner. So that's where
that's a big position to be in,
especially when you're spending 50 grand a week. If I guarantee you that if every marketer out there had to shell out
their own money, sure,
because the business is failing, they would not look at ROAS ever again.
Yeah.
Because
100%. Or the ones that would be out of business.
Exactly. So it's like, hey, if I don't care what ROAS is, but if I lose profitability, you have to pay for it. Would you ever look at ROAS? No,
100%. So just so rewinding a little bit on that. So you're in a scenario right now where you've lined up that the in-app CPA, what we're seeing in Google ads, Meta ads, whatever the case is correlated cleanly with the back-end results of the business. So the overall NCAC. So if you pay $100, let's say for, I don't know what the actual amount is, but $36, I think is what, $36 in platform, you then pay $256 for the new customer. So you want to float around that amount. Now, if you were in a scenario where you build the sheet out and you notice, hey, we have a couple, days or weeks worth of data, ideally longer than that, but I know that obviously it's a new sheet. So, or if you're not tracking this, it's going to take some time to build up that year-over-year data, which is extremely valuable, by the way. If you're not doing it, start now because it'll pay dividends in the future. But if you find yourself in a scenario then where you're saying, hey, I'm still at a good CPA in app, but my NCAC is now increasing, then that's a trigger for this is probably, it is going more towards warm traffic. And so this is where all the strategies come in, and like that's sort of the diagnosis process of it. But so in that scenario, then this would tell you this is not working or it's too warm. We need to get more efficient.
Yeah. Like I don't need CAPI imports. I don't need Triple L. I don't need HighRoast. I don't need NordBeam. I don't need anything to tell me that I'm buying my own customers. This does. So your data is already there.
Yeah.
HighRoast doesn't, or Triple L and Wicked Reports and NordBeam, they don't create data. They just interpret your own data.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, in my opinion, like I'm not calling it a scam, but there's no reason why you couldn't do this without them.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is I think it's important. As an example too, like that MERR number here and MERR less subs, the MERR number here is also compounding because again, I have compounding new revenue that will then compound my returning revenue. Do you see how it went from $100.05? Then, a few months later, it's like 824.
Yep.
Then a few months later, it's 1,433. Then a few months later, it's $2,000 and $7,000. Then a few months later, it's $5,000, $11,000. Then so you see, so now we went from day one, we had $570 returning revenue. And then, not day one, but week one. Now, a year later, we have $10,000 in returning revenue that I'm not paying for. That is contributing to that top line, allowing me to continue to increase ad spend and scale. Everything works together. So organic traffic, direct traffic that returns, all of those have to be tracked to know that I can take my ad spend from 70 to 80. What's interesting about this is if we're digital marketers, if we go to our client and say, hey, what do you think we should spend next month? We don't know our metrics good enough yet. And that's the question that if you ask your client or your company and we say, hey, what do we think we should spend next month? That part we have to know, we have to advise on that. And that's what I think is important. Hey, we've gone from 64 to 82. It dropped our MERR a bit because we're buying more new customers. However, our MERR less sub is stable and our NCAC is actually fairly stable. We're looking at cost per acquired first time customer. It actually went from 277 down to 273. But we're reaching a point where we don't want to get too close to 2. So let's hold this for a few weeks. Let new customers flow in. Let email compound them. Let the subscribers start to get a second, third subscription. Then we'll scale again. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I all of that I can predict the future because I know my metrics so well. And I know where to push the ad spend because I know what we've done. So this all of that.
Well, I think this is kind of the whole value prop of having a media buyer too in the first place. And like, this is sort of the angle that we push is trying to have control over the whole funnel, or at least the majority of the funnel. So then you can know, number one, what you're doing to then affect these numbers in the proper way. Whereas if you have someone that's newer to media buying, they're not going to know, like, for example, Performance Max goes after repeat users most likely versus not. They're not going to know, like, the SOPs, I guess you can say, around be on the lookout for these potential issues, because you'll see it on the back end, meaning you'll see a correlation of warm traffic and not know that it's Performance Max and maybe start to change something that just looks worse in platform. And then that's going to kill the business. Right. So super, super important to understand what is typically the cause of warm traffic if you don't have CAPI imports. Yeah. And this is, like you were mentioning, I mean, this is super important because, yeah, you don't even need a third-party tool to diagnose the problem, but you might need a third-party tool to solve the problem further or to make the problem less of a problem, assuming that the media buyer is also doing all the right things.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of, well, and if not everyone's watching the same metric, then nothing works, period. If you and your client are on in sync, which is like hopping into this, filling out the information, you should be able to look at that and then look at each other in the face and say, yep, that's what we need to do. Like it should be the unspoken rule. Like that's how well this should work. And that's kind of what this does now. And that's how myself and my business partner, Chris, we look at this, we're like, ooh, yep, you got it. See you next week. Like we already knew, like, yep, got to reduce ad spend. That's getting a little close. This one's eking up a little bit. We have to actually hold tight a bit. Like we already know what it should look like, what it looks like now and why, and what we need to do to fix it. Like that is now, we just meet every Wednesday and we talk about new strategies. We don't even talk about the results because we already know what it is before we even met. Yeah. So let me continue on with this here too. The Google and Meta spend cost for new customers. This is coming out of just Shopify. That is one of the 4 elements where we make money. The next area that we make inside of Shopify, we have to look at in the elements are new customers versus sales versus total revenue. Then we also look at recharge because we make 52 grand here. We make another 28 grand here. And then on Amazon, we make another 42 grand here. So if you're not tracking, okay, when I increase ad spend on Meta, what does my Shopify look like in sales? How many new customers? What happened to my subscribers? Because that may not be included in your Shopify total metrics. And then what was the overlap and bleed on Amazon? Because that's 40% of global e-commerce. If you're not tracking all 3, you're going to fail while succeeding. It means like, wow, we're making so much more money over here. Yes, but Shopify is the only thing I'm tracking as a conversion, and we're not making a lot of money. Why would we spend 50 grand to make 50 grand and then say, wow, this is a great idea. Let's go and make it 120 grand and 130 grand. Like, oh, that would not be a good idea because you can't get a 1.92 if you're spending 50, making 50. Something's different. So we have to add up, well, we're making 50 grand in revenue. We're making 28 grand here and we're making 42 grand here. Let's just do a fun element. All right. So watch 50 grand in spend equates to 50 plus 30 plus, let's just call it 50. So, the 130. So 50 and 130. Okay. Let's just add in ad spend. Okay. And now let's just add this into 130. Now 130 is making us 111. We went down in that ratio. So we're spending 50 on all spend and Shopify said 50. Now we're spending 130 and we're only making 111. We should pull back, right? Well, no, we're now up to 40 grand in revenue, which was 28. So that's about 40% more inside of our recharge. And our Amazon is now up to 80 where it used to be 40. So that doubled. Okay, so now if you're tracking in platform, you missed the recharge subscriptions and you missed the bleed the bleed that is happening inside of
Amazon.
But we went from a 1.92 at 50, we're at a 1.63, 1.57, all the way up to 140. Sometimes we even bounce off like the twos up here at like when we brought it back down to 90. So I already know what we're actually making here. It's 1.67 and 1.92. Good. I know what I can go down to. We can't go below a 1.5. Otherwise, we do a cap call. We pay money out of our own pocket to keep the company afloat. So when you see us go down to 1.5, 1.5, 1.52, we don't dip below that. We did dip down below right here and then immediately rectified it the next week. We got a little aggressive. We went up to 140 Gs a week in spend. That got a little aggressive. Now, what did we buy our new customers for? 186. Oh, fuck. So we're spending 186 when we used to spend 256. We're fine. We just went too hard on new customers. Back off. Give it some time.
Yeah, for the cash flow to come in from the LTV.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because
this is different for every business too, by the way. Sometimes you have better AOVs, so you don't have to wait as long for buyback periods.
There is not two companies that this will be the same on in the history of time.
Yeah, so, even if in the same niche, same model, same everything. Yeah.
Right. Who buys on Amazon versus buys on recharge versus their attrition rate on subscribers versus the people that would actually buy on your website. Every single company is different. So John, what's the best thing? Track them all. That's the best. There is no best. It is specifically unique in every single business. And they are no two alike. What is alike? How you measure. That's the only thing. Hey, if you like this video, we have a school community where we have a few hundred members and we cover topics, everything from the basics to all the way to the like hyper crazy advanced stuff that's like coming out next month. So a few hundred members there. We go live twice a week, something with an hour-long education about something that is very relevant to the community that week, plus a weekly Q&A where you just get to come and bring us all of your problems and we solve them one at a time.
So I have a link below in the description if you want to join. And then obviously if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we can answer those for you. And we'll see you in there.